What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Ani-mity, and welcome to a video I've been very excited to make for a very long time, because today I'm going to be talking to you guys about one of my absolutely favorite trading card games of all time, Card Fight Vanguard. Now, I know I've always said that this channel is going to be a storytelling channel, and it still is, because today I'm going to be telling you guys my experience with getting into Vanguard, getting into the trading card game scene altogether, telling you guys all about that story and about how all of that happened. And then also a little bit about what it is about Vanguard that I love so much, what it is about it that I am so enamored by. So let's take a few steps back. Come back with me here to the past. God, is it bad that I don't remember how long ago this was now? It must have been like around 10 or so years ago. I was back in my elementary school. No, it must have been more than 10 years ago now. Maybe like 12 years ago now, maybe. I remember being in my elementary school, and I remembered Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the hot thing. It was the thing everyone was into, you know. You know how it is in kindergarten. You have those kids, they bring their trading card games to lunch, you have those games that happen, you have trading that happens, you have that bully that steals your cards, all that kind of stuff. All that happened back then. And I remembered, I think Ollie and I have talked about this a bunch of times before, but when something is popular, I usually steer as clear from it as I possibly can be. It's like, if everyone wants to go left, I'ma go right. Thank you very much. Because I never liked being, I guess, in with the popular crowd. It was just like, I had so many bad associations with what it meant to be popular that I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm gonna go the other way now. Thank you very much. And I was fine with my obscure content and the people that I had to talk to about said obscure content. And it wasn't really until I got out of elementary school and I started getting further and further away from people who were like really aggressively into Yu-Gi-Oh! That I started giving it more of a shot myself. And that was my gateway into the trading card game world right there. I remembered I bought my first Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. I saw the anime. When I saw the anime, I had no idea what the rules were whatsoever. I just kind of started making them up based off what I kind of saw on the screen, and even then I didn't really understand it altogether. I was just like, big shiny monster comes onto field, attacks, game. Pretty much that was my only impression of Yu-Gi-Oh! Altogether. So I always wanted to get into it, and eventually I did. And I started getting my friends into it, and I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot with my friends. I started getting really into the way that we had that back and forth with each other, and it was a great time until I logged onto my first online game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where I wasn't playing with one of my friends, I was just playing against someone on the internet who knew where. And that's where I was introduced to the horrors of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta, of a gameplay where you're basically watching your opponent do a combo for a long time. And yes, all the way back then, this was a problem. We had people who would just be like building up these boards to completely prevent you from being able to play. You'd be like, oh, play this card down. Stopped it. Play this card down. Nope. Just everything you tried to do, your opponent would just shut you down. It would just make it so that way you just can't play the game. And at that point, it's just like, well, what am I sitting around here for? Scoop, move on to the next game. But the thing is, I found that was every game. It was the next game, and the next game, and the next game, and the next one. Every single one of them. And every single time, these people would be spamming at me in the messages down below with these hateful messages about me and the deck I was playing and the fact that I wasn't that good at the game. It was terrible. I hated every single moment of it. And I was like, okay, I love being able to just, separate myself from the real world, be able to accept the fact that just like, imagination's the way it's at. I'm a child at heart, and I own that proudly. But at the same time, you have to realize at one point, this is a children's card game that you're getting upset about. Like, I understand passion. I understand getting passionate about something. Getting passionate about something enough that you want to hurt someone, either emotionally or otherwise, I don't get that. And I started kind of growing away from Yu-Gi-Oh! Picard. I started growing away from Yu-Gi-Oh! Because of that. Because I just didn't want to be a part of that scene. I didn't want to be a part of that sphere altogether. It just wasn't something I was interested in. And that's when I started looking into some other trading card games out there. And there were a bunch of them that were out there at the time. There was Magic, which Magic the Gathering, I have a few gripes with this game. And it's a case of, again, it was a very popular thing when I was trying to get into it, so because of that, I naturally had like a dislike for it, so I automatically started going the other way from it because everyone else was into it. And on top of that, the people who I knew who were very, very into it were not probably the best people that I knew at the time. So I just never really liked getting into it. And on top of that, I played it a little bit myself, like with people who I was happy to play it against. And I just found like it's a much slower game than what I would like. Nothing against the game itself, it's just not for me. I just don't like those kind of games where it's just like it's very much like a I like building up my resources and I like being able to pop off on my opponent once I've, spent the time building it up, but it always felt like it was a little bit too slow for my liking in that game. I liked the breakneck speed of Yu-Gi-Oh! While not having to worry about being negated like I did in Magic. And I was wondering, is there such a game out there that does it? Is there such a game where I can play and not have to worry about my stuff getting shut down and go up against my opponent and have my fun with them? And that was when YouTube decided to bless me with the first episode of Card Fight Vanguard, the anime. And I fell madly in love with it just from that. I thought the animation style was so good. I thought the English voices, because back then I didn't have as much of a preference towards sub or dub back then. The English voices I thought were amazing in that episode. The animation style looked so good. The story I thought was really, really good. I fell madly in love. And this was the OG Vanguard, like the Aichi, the Kai, Ren, Tsukumori, all that kind of stuff. All of that, and it just all looked so good. So I was like, well, darn it, I found myself a new anime to get into. I found myself a new card game to get into. So I started looking into Vanguard. And I think by then, like, the Legion era was new. I remember the structure. I bought a Legion structure deck back then. And I really wanted to start building my Royal Paladin because I wanted to be the protagonist. I wanted to be Aichi. I wanted to be able to find that strength in myself. Because the thing with Vanguard is always imagination and imagining yourself as someone stronger. Being able to use that imagination as your power to power through the everyday. And I love that. I wanted that for myself in a lot of things. So onto Vanguard I went. And I started introducing it to a bunch of my friends, and not a lot of them liked it. I loved the game, and I've stayed by the game. I had a dropping off period, a little bit of it, when we got to a certain era of the game, which for those who don't know, there was an era of the game where they kind of rebooted things, and the way cards were made and the structuring behind so much of it was kind of all over the place. So I didn't end up liking that era that much. I kind of felt like it was like Vanguard was slipping into its Yu-Gi-Oh phase, and I kind of started turning away from the game a little bit from that, but they got me right back on the next reboot. They got me on it with the new system that they have. And where the game is now, I could not be happier with the game. And I think, like, if there's another reboot of Vanguard in the future, if there's another reboot or redoing of the game, I think that I'll always keep coming back to this format of it. For those who don't know, it's called the Standard or D format of Vanguard. And I loved how inclusive and I loved how nice the community was there, but I also loved the gameplay itself. The gameplay felt so fun to do, and I remember I introduced Chris to it around the time that the new format was coming out, and it was so easy to get him into the game. It was so easy to get him to teach the rules, and the games ended up being so close. That's something else I love about Vanguard. It's a game that can be so tense and come so close down to the wire, regardless of skill level, and I love that game. And the fact is, you can play the same game with the same decks any number of times, the result will not always be the same, and you'll always have that little bit of variability to how the games go, and it makes it so exciting to get into, and I love being able to have that with Chris, and all the games we played were so fun because of that. So what was it about Vanguard that won me over? Like, what was it about this game that really got me into it? And there's a few things. I feel with every trading card game, there's a story that you kind of tell with the cards. Like, obviously, a lot of cards in a lot of different games have their own lores and their own stories. In Magic, I know they definitely do. In Vanguard, they do. Is there a lore for Yu-Gi-Oh? I don't actually know. I know some cards have like a lore and a story that they tell, but I don't think that's all of them. And I think it's just kind of like when they feel it's mostly their lore is the anime, is pretty much it, which, that's fine. But it's just like it's different when you have like these stories of like knights and dragons and all the stories that you can generate from the other cards the way you do in Vanguard. I always loved them to pieces. I always thought they were so interesting, and I always loved being able to hear the stories of them. But that wasn't really something that won me over with the game. What I liked about it, though, was the story you told every game you played. So the way that they explain Vanguard in the first episode, the way that they kind of pitch you the game is this. You have been teleported to the planet Cray, this planet that's just like Earth, but where all these creatures are real. And in that moment, you possess one of the creatures of that planet. And through your connection to that creature, you lead an army into battle against your opponent and their armies. And it's the story of how you build up your forces, how you rally your troops together to draw them against an opponent, how you continue gathering strength, how you continue building up in power to try to be able to defeat your opponent, and the story of the casualties that happen across it. I always loved the passion that comes out of those stories. The way they illustrate that in the anime I thought was so great, and how it translates to the real world even better. Whenever I played with Chris, it was always kind of this back and forth between the two of us, neither one of us ever keeping the upper hand for long. There was always that one tipping point that changes everything for each turn. And it was always just like down to the wire, down to the last card, the final move we make that changes everything for the game. I've never really felt that with a game before. I've had close games in Yu-Gi-Oh! I've had close games in a lot of different card games that I play. But those were few and far between. And it was something that I just kind of, I guess, like, I never experienced them as often as I would have liked to. I never felt like I was playing that close or that down to the wire with most of those games. With Vanguard, every single game felt in its own way, like it was just coming down to that last card. And the thing I also grew to love about Vanguard is that it's, in my opinion, a perfect analogous to life. And there's a lot of people who disagree with me on this statement, but I was always taught that life is 99% skill and 99% like how you manage to work your resources and work with the things that you have in your life and the way that circumstances build out. And then it's 1% luck. Now, you can have that 99% skill down and down pat, but the thing that's always going to work against you is that 1%. Without that 1% luck, all that skill pretty much doesn't matter. And similarly, you could say that you have that 1% luck, but without the 99% skill, all that luck doesn't matter. You need both, and you need both solidly to be able to make it anywhere in life. That's what I've always believed, and it's what I've always kind of thought for my view of things around me. And Vanguard, I thought, was a perfect analogous to this, because I think a lot of people who are into Vanguard would say, like, oh, it's not 1% luck, it's more like 50% luck, or maybe even 90% luck, because there is a luck element to Vanguard for certain. More so than I think a lot of trading card games that I've played in the past. It's definitely got a bit more of a luck element between what cards you draw to your hand at what moments, and how the cards play out as the game continues. But the way I see it is the cards you're dealt from the very first turn, and the cards you draw from the deck forward, are opportunities. It's the opportunities that you get over the course of your life. It's the opportunities and the circumstances that lead you to who you are in that moment. It's the accidents that have occurred over your life. It's the schools that you went to. It's the things that you've done over the course of your life. All of that and how that builds into who you are now. Every card drawn is that for you, or I thought that's what it represented. And then every time you do one of the trigger checks, which I should say, if you don't know what Vanguard is, check out one of my tutorial videos, link to that down below. But every single one of the times you performed what we call the trigger check in the game, or when you're doing that element of luck that Vanguard's known for, that's the gambles you take in life, the chances that you take. Because the thing is, I am not a gambler. I never liked the idea of gambling anything on life, because there's always the question of what if. What if it doesn't work out? What if I end up just falling flat on my face, embarrassing myself? What if I end up losing everything that I worked so hard to get to in this one gamble? And I originally thought I can get through my life not really having to gamble anything, and I was going to make sure that I never did. I'd always work my hardest. I'd always be able to make every shot I take as sure as I can. And I thought sure as I can meant there's no way I could miss. And of course I still missed, because I'm a terrible shot. But the thing is, that's also just a part of life. That's a part of the package that we get with life. It's, you take a shot, you take a gamble, because you have to. You don't get through life without taking those chances. And if you don't, you're missing out on so many opportunities in the world. And I thought, like, with Vanguard, it always felt like that. It was always like, it comes down to taking that gamble. It comes down to taking that chance, taking that risk to try to make things work out for you. And sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But the thing is, it never determined how things went from there. You got unlucky that one moment? Big deal. You have another turn, you always build back up from there. And it was always, when I played with Chris, it was like one of us would get unlucky, but that wouldn't say like, oh yeah, right that moment, that's the end of the game, right there. Luck would be working against us, but we always kept pushing back against luck. We always kept trying our luck again and again and retrying our chances, reorganizing our chances, our opportunities, and being able to find our way through and find our way to defeat our opponent. It was great. And I love that about Vanguard so much, that it speaks so much to that part of life that honestly makes life so much fun, makes it so interesting. I love that about Vanguard so much, and I love the chance to like introduce it to so many other people. I love the chance to be able to play it with so many people for what it does for that, because it revived this like sense of hope in taking chances. It revived the sense of like, it's not going to work out, but if it doesn't, that's okay. That I'd always be able to find a way to bounce back, that I'd always find a way to be able to make these opportunities work in a way I'd never thought before. And the thing is, it encourages taking that leap, taking that chance that you never thought you would have before. And it makes it just so much fun to get to do. And I implore you guys to check out Vanguard. It's such a fun game to explore on your own. I'm not just saying that because, of course, I want to be able to do more of that on the channel. It's like the stories that we tell with every single match that we have. I will always, always love the foolish people who think that they have luck on their side and will not call down an entire army thinking that they've got it, or a person who plays too sheltered, who plays too much on the defensive. Those stories I'm always happy to tell with every game that I do. But, of course, I implore people to tell their own stories with it. I implore people to look into the game, try it out for themselves, tell their own stories with people. Give the game a shot, because I think that it, at least in this particular format now, has never felt more inviting for people to take a ride with us through the world of Cray, through the worlds that we can imagine together. And it speaks so strongly to imagination for me. I love things that revolve around the imagination. I have always said, I've always been a dreamer. I've always had one foot grounded here in reality, the rest of myself, all the way up in the clouds, all the way up in the dream world. And Vanguard kind of made that blurring of the line that much more enjoyable, and it made it so much more rewarding to dip into, because you'd be in this new world and you'd be having these clashes. And I think in one of the episodes of the anime, they said it best of like, it's a fight and it's a battle that you get to have with someone without worrying about them getting hurt on the other end. And I love that for the game. I love being able to have these clashes with people that I can get passionate about it with Chris, and we'll be really, really into it. And it's just like, it all comes down to this. We're both so hyped. We're both waiting to see like, what's the next card going to be drawn, seeing where this game's going to go. I love being able to do that. And I hope that other people can find opportunities to do that with this game as well. It's one of my absolute favorite games that I've ever played, and I'm so grateful that I got the chance to discover it and that it's helped me make so many different friends that I have. And I hope that people have their own stories of those games, of those things that they did that just opened up a whole new realm of possibility and a whole new realm of friends and everything more. Because Vanguard did that for me, and I'm glad that I got to share that with you guys here. Oh, thank you guys so much for listening to this. Hope you guys found it entertaining. Hope you guys found it interesting, and I will catch you guys in the next one.